Hello everyone, in this video we're going to have a look at how to use basic interactions. We'll be discussing both Game Creator 1 and Game Creator 2. Here we are in the scene for Game Creator 1. So right off the bat, this is everything in your structure. So we've got all of the default stuff, directional light and main camera motors, and we'll go through all of this. Now first things first, I do want to highlight that if for some reason all of your materials are pink, that means you are using URP or HCRP, and all you have to do is upgrade the materials. These are all using basic materials, so they can all be converted using the built-in converter for URP or HCRP. Cool. So for everything else, let's have a look. So we have the basic trigger for pause, so you can use escape. We've got the trigger for run, which is a really basic one, but it just allows you to run with left shift, just to test all of this sooner. Now the demo scene itself really is just a demo scene. Everything here, it truly is about it truly is about the prefab. So even the player is nothing special here. So yeah, it truly is all about prefabs. So let's have a look at these prefabs then. So by default, everything you see here, these are all of the prefabs that use nothing except for stats. I think there's only one that even uses stats, but without stats, it's just as a dependency, it's just really hard to do stuff. I think stats is just so basic and essential that you kind of should have it by now. If you are using Game Creator, of course. For everything else, I try to keep dependencies as minimal as possible. However, if you do have more modules installed, then obviously there will be some changes. Some of the prefabs simply work better as well. So yeah, let's have a look here. So first things first, we've got the chair, the bed. These are all pretty basic in the sense that they're just for sitting and lying down, and it's all about the conditions. So we're using E by default to enter. That's just a default interaction, and then once we press E, we have conditions for enter and exit that are just for the UI, nothing else. And then when we press E for enter, we've got all of this. Now if you want to change something, the thing to change here would obviously be the mesh for the office. So drop in a different mesh, position it right so that it still fits with the animations. Now all of these are using simple placeholder animations, none of them are the most spectacular ones. So if you have better animations, please use them, and the way to use them would either be in the states that are included, so just drop in the new animations, or if they use a gesture, just drop in the new gesture. And for the basic things like sitting, etc., that really is all there is to it. Now I am turning off the colliders in order to make sure that there's no weird collision issues. So if you drop in a new mesh, you need to do that here as well. And yeah, overall it's pretty simple. It's really easy to adjust. That's the whole point, making it really simple to replace things with your own animations and your own meshes. And yeah, that really is everything. When it comes to the bed, really no different. That's it. I made sure that nothing here uses global variables, so if you are using this in an existing project, this will still work. Just drop in your prefabs and you're done. Now let's have a look at some of the more interesting ones, some of the ones that actually are a bit more complex to set up or use. So we're going to start off with the chest, and the reason I say a bit more complex is because the chest will use its own animator. So there's an animator on it, and the moment we open it up, it's going to play the trigger in the animator. meaning that if you replace this with your own mesh, you need to place the animator on top of it as well, so it can play. And when we have a look at this animator, again, it's really simple. All of the animations obviously are there, but they need to you need to make sure that they actually work with the new mesh as well. So yeah, that's a bit more complex in terms of, you know, it's using an animator. Pretty much the only way to do this. Now, with this one, I wanted to show that there are other ways to make it work if you're not too comfortable with using animators. For this one, for the panel, for example, we're actually using game creator actions to rotate this lever instead of actually animating it. So it's same with the door, so it's a slightly different approach, and that's why I wanted to include both, just so you can see that you can either use actions or you can use animators to make this work. So yeah, pretty cool. Other than that, the rest of the actions, I mean, just have a look. All of them are structured pretty much exactly the same. That's the whole point, for it to be easily understandable. And again, you know, as with everything else, just replace the meshes. Now, some of the more interesting ones, like mining and wood chopping, and again, you know, if you have better animations, again, please use them. Now, wood chopping is a bit more complex, considering we actually have to interact here. So we have a button E and a button F. Now, the F only works once we've activated this, and basically it allows you to chop. Now, how many hits it takes for this to fall down and basically be depleted is something you can just change here. So you can change this to 10, and then, you know, it's a resource for 10 chops. 4 is the default that I set, but, you know, no particular nothing for that really. So it's, you know, it's just about the amount of hits you do. So after 4 it will fall down and it will be depleted. The mine works exactly the same, by the way, there's no difference. Now the nice thing here, so basically on execute, so when we execute chopping, it will deplete 1 hit. It will requires 1 hit, and then it will deplete 1 hit. And if not, you know, it will be depleted, and that's pretty much it. So yeah, really simple, really straightforward. Once you know, and that makes it nice. Obviously, you know, you need different meshes. If you want the meshes to be easily destructible, so that it, you know, actually falls down with a normal tree, I'd advise using something like Dino Fracture for, you know, rather cheap option, or Rayfire if you already own that, and you can just make every mesh a destructible. And that's the approach I took here as well. So we have a full mesh that is displayed by default, and then we have a broken mesh that is just in the same place, and basically it consists of two pieces in this case, and one with a rigid body, so that it actually falls down. I think I even included a small explosion force just to make sure it really falls, but it's physics based rather than animations. That's a personal choice. I always prefer physics, but you know, you can always just make it an animation, like with the chest, for example. But yeah, personally, I definitely always prefer physics, because, you know, it's just more fun in games. Makes everything feel more alive. But yeah, just take the same approach, you know, just fracture your tree with, you know, one of those tools. There's a couple of free tools that do the same thing, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Now, when it comes to fishing, this was definitely one of the more fun ones to do, in my opinion. So yeah, when it comes to fishing really is a mini game. So again, just like with chopping and mining, you know, we're using some extra buttons. So we have the F, and basically with fishing we have a loot table. So what you can receive basically is stored in here. So we have different loot options, so it will pick at random, it will pick something here. So when we look at the catch conditions, so it will reset everything, assign some bulls, and then it will randomly pick something from this list. And this list basically contains actions that it will execute. So as you can see, when we look at conditions catch, so it will randomly pick something here. Oh, sorry, caught. Sorry. It will randomly pick something here from this list, and these are all I made them prefabs as well. These what you can actually pick up. So by default, I don't think there's anything in here if you're not using the inventory module. Just shows a notification what it's actually doing. And it's a really easy way to randomly pick. You basically have a couple of seconds to catch something. So let's have a look. Let's actually play here. I'm going to do focused just to make it easier. Now, the moment you select one of these modules, something will happen. And let's actually have a look here. And again, this is just for the demo. There's no need to use this in your own game, obviously. It's just for demonstration purposes. But selecting different ones will simply just instantiate different prefabs based on your choices. And as you can see, different versions are instantiated of the prefabs. And yeah, that's pretty much all it does. So again, for your own game, there's no need to do any of that. Just drop in the prefabs you have based on the modules you have. So if we have a look here at fishing, so yeah, we'll play this. Nice, obviously have real water, have a nicer fishing pole. And then we'll start a countdown. We have 2 seconds, and then it will reset. And then at some point it will come again, and we press F on the right time, it will execute those actions, and we caught something. And yeah, that's really cool. So we have +1 gauntlets added, and the inventory module version works exactly the same as the default one. It's just a different loot. And assassinate is another pretty cool one. So when we look at assassinate, it plays a melee clip. Now if you are using the melee module, it can use rude motion from melee clips rather than not doing it. Now this is the last one I added, which is picking up a box. This is slightly more complex when it comes to what it's doing, because we're using some different actions here, because positioning and all of that. But yeah, it's pretty cool. It's we can pick it back up again and just carry it around. It's a full locomotion, and we can place it wherever we want. Cool. So yeah, chopping wood, like I said. Now let's have a look. Chopping, oh well, we can't change that anymore now, can we? But yeah, once we do this, the amount will go down. As you can see, it's 3, 2, 1, and that's it. It will oh no, one more. Sorry about that. And then it will break, and that's it. That's all we can chop. So yeah, pretty cool. It will then stop, so we can't interact with it anymore. Mining works the same. And here again, the pushing object, we're literally moving the game object here. And if you are using the melee module, it will actually use rude motion to really move the player around. Which is way better than having actions move him around. So yeah, cool stuff. Quite like this. Open the doors actually using rude motion as well, so the player is really moving around, and yeah, using an animator as well, just like the chest. Now with everything, like I said, if you want to replace any of the models, if you want to replace any of the animations, it's all pretty much the same setup. That was the whole point of this. So here, that's the model. Just replace that. Just make sure to double check the first conditions to see if you need to reassign some of the components for the mesh colliders that turn off. And animations is either going to be a state or it's going to be a gesture that you just need to replace, and that's it. That's all there is to it if you want to use these in your projects. So yeah, pretty simple, pretty straightforward, but that was the whole point here, to make it really easy to set up. And if you want to dig a bit more into how all of this works, be sure to check check the first set of conditions. The UI conditions will pretty much always be exactly the same, because that's just for entering and exiting. But the first conditions, this is where really all of the action happens. And with some of the more complex one, like fishing and chopping wood, there will be two set of conditions that you need to check, and then double check. So just have a look through these. I try to keep it as simple as possible, but obviously we are doing quite a bit with some of these more complex ones, so might take a bit of studying to fully understand what they do. But again, I really try to keep it as simple as possible. And the strength here is, yes, you can just drop these into your existing scenes. No need to base it off the demo scene for anything really. This really is just a demo scene of the prefabs, nothing else. So no scene dependencies, and no global variable dependencies or inventory module dependencies whatsoever. So yeah, cool. Let's have a look at Game Creator 2. Here we are in the Game Creator 2 version. Now, first sight, it's exactly the same, but that's because it's really not that different, except for obviously all of the triggers, actions, conditions being changed to Game Creator 2. Now, in a lot of ways, a lot of these didn't change that much in terms of their structure. So when we have a look at the chair, the bed, the chest, the door, all of these incredibly similar. Now there is one big difference, is that we're using the interact system that is built in Game Creator 2 rather than using trigger on key enter that Game Creator 1 used. So by default the interact will use E as well, because it's kind of the default interact button in pretty much any game really. So yeah, by default that is set to E anyway. But yeah, that's why this trigger is different. If you want to check these conditions, again, really similar in terms of the structure. I don't think there's much of a difference. Now, one big difference you will see is that overall the Game Creator 2 version has a lot less game objects in the scene, like a lot less. That's because Game Creator 2 is just structured differently, which is really nice. Another advantage is that we don't need the melee module, which isn't even there yet, for root motion. Root motion is built in Game Creator 2 for gesture, so all of these, the assassinate, the pushing this block, walking through the door, it's all just using the default gestures that use root motion. In terms of the structure, again, it's just not that different. But when we have a look at the door, this is all pretty much the exact same as Game Creator 1 version, just using the interact trigger. And when we have a look at the actions here, using the same animator with the same animations, but it's just using the default gesture action with root motion, which is really nice, really cool, makes life so much easier. When we have a look at the more complex ones, that's where things really do change, because yeah, those are quite different. By the way, the emote wheel didn't even address that one. This one I'm pretty happy with, actually. It's pretty cool. You can use it. You could obviously use this for so many other things. If you want it to be a weapon wheel, you can, it can be a weapon wheel. Yeah, okay, let's do this quick. I think it was tab. Yeah, you can make this a weapon wheel as well. Now the emote wheel is a bit more complex than you'd expect it to be in terms of actions and conditions, and that's because I wanted this pop out effect where it's slightly bigger, sticks out a bit, and then I can't remember I checked some game that actually had that. I think it was PUBG, could be wrong, Anyway, I wanted that stick out effect as well. So when we have a look at the emote wheel, you'll see something interesting. So when we have a look at all of our buttons, where are the buttons? There we go. So when we have a look at the buttons here, so yes, it's going to turn off the emote wheel, and it's doing that with just with canvas groups, by the way. So it's not really being turned off, it's just being becomes invisible and uninteractable. It allows us to have that slight fade effect, but there's just some advantages to not really disabling game objects you need to, you know, keep using. So yeah, you know, as I said, it just plays. Now if you want to use this as a weapon wheel, you could just literally do an equip action for some items, for example. So yeah, that's pretty nice, I guess. What else? Yeah, so one of the things, like I said, I wanted that pop out effect. So in order to do that, it is literally changing the parent of the button to go to this one, and it's rescaling. I know that sounds a bit extreme, but because this one is lower in the hierarchy, this will become the priority, so will be on top in terms of UI scaling, if you've have looked at how the UI works. So basically the background has to be on top, for everything else to be laid over, and by making these buttons basically reparent to this one being higher in the hierarchy, this will be on top, and that's why it has that pop out effect, because it's literally going to be on top. And then when we you know, hover exit, on hover exit, it's going to reparent to this one and, you know, rescale. So that's how I did that. Again, I know it seems a bit complex, but I really wanted to have, you know, a little bit of extra. So yeah, sorry if that's a bit complex. One big difference here is that if you are using Game Creator 1, these are not using Game Creator triggers. This is using event triggers in Game Creator 1. And in Game Creator 2, it's using Game Creator triggers that are just made for this. So yeah, slight difference in the way it works, but that's it. That's really the only difference. Everything else is pretty much exactly the same. So yeah, the emote wheel is pretty cool. So let's have a look at fishing. It doesn't really matter which one it is. Mining, chopping. So the interact button, like I said, is the default for E. Now, as you can see, it's lacking that other trigger for F, and that's really what is completely different, is that we have a hidden trigger here that activates whenever the pressing F should be visible. And that is because, again, we're using the interact button here, and the interact button is by default always mapped to E, and you can't just switch that around. And even if we could, wouldn't solve anything, because we can always use E to escape chopping wood or fishing or anything like that. So that's why we have this additional trigger, simply because on trigger enter isn't there because it got replaced with interact. But yeah, you know, in this case we need two buttons, so that's why I took a slightly different approach. Again, for everything, just like with Game Creator 1, if you want to have a look at how all of this works, always just check the first set of conditions. These are just UI conditions, does nothing else. Check the first set of conditions here, which goes through all of the actions. That really is all there is to it. Now, one of the things that definitely, you know, is really nice is, again, you know, we have that root motion built in. Love that. But yeah, for everything else, you know, it's all pretty much functions exactly the same. You know, some actions will be different, or interactions, than you're used to, depending on if you're using Game Creator 1 or 2. But yeah, that's pretty much it. You know, everything else works exactly the same. And that's the whole point. You know, it's supposed to be really easy to use. It's supposed to be really easy to modify, because obviously, you know, these placeholder meshes and, you know, even animations should be, you know, should be really really easy to swap. It's all about the set of you know, the set of actions that we set up. You know, having this, I know there's been a lot of requests for things like this. You know, to have interactions, to have interactables, to be able to chop wood, mine, and much more. I will be expanding what is coming to this asset as well, so there will be more, don't worry about that. And yeah, that's it for this video. Hope you enjoy it. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out on the Discord. But once you understand how one of these works, you pretty much understand how all of them work. And that was the whole point, you know, a really easy framework of prefabs that are just, you know, drop in, drop out. So thanks for watching, and if you bought Basic Interactions, appreciate the support, and I'll see you in the next one.